On September 27th of 2020, a mere day before the release of Genshin Impact, we were given an overview of Genshin Impact's story in totality via the Teyvat Chapter Storyline Preview, Travail trailer. While the trailer itself can be accepted to contain spoilers, most of its content without context is largely meaningless or near impossible to really decipher unless you look at it through the lens of what we've learned so far. In this video, I'm going to dive into Dainleif's cryptic words about the state of affairs in Sumeru in order to explore the potential arc for the new region and explain why knowledge and wisdom are two very different things. But first, I'm currently striving to reach the goal of 150,000 subscribers. So, whether you're new to the channel or you've watched lots of my videos but haven't subscribed yet, please support what I do by subscribing and help me beat the YouTube algorithm and reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. With Inazuma having arrived 9 months ago now, eyes and expectations move to the horizon of new regions, with Sumeru being the particular focus of those expectations. The story within the game itself has been fairly light with regard to details on the Nation of Wisdom, but our biggest hint of what's going on there was revealed in the Travail trailer as Dainleif says this.
The god of wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself, and the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. In the city of scholars, there is a push for folly, yet the god of wisdom makes no argument against it.
Dain's words actually tell us quite a lot in light of all that we've learned since 2.0. To start, he tells us the god of wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself. A cryptic, if not insanely confusing statement to make, given that the current Dendro Archon's very principle is wisdom. But it makes perfect sense when you start to pull up the threads that have been established with regards to the truth of the calamities from Teyvat's past. After all, Byakuyakuku was tossed into the abyss after learning that truth. We learned from Yae Miko at the resolution of the Inazuma Archon questline Omnipresence Over Mortals that Sumeru trades knowledge as currency, and as currency is also known as the root of all evil. The lens through which we view the plot for Sumeru begins to become rapidly more clear. With currency established as a driving factor for the acquisition of knowledge, it stands to reason that those who make the biggest discoveries, particularly those of life-changing or nation-destroying manner, would have the promise of the most substantial payoffs. Furthermore, if one could hoard that knowledge, rationing it off bit by bit to the highest bidders, one stands to make quite the sizable fortune. This would lead me to believe that the truth has already been discovered by some in Sumeru, and they're auctioning off the knowledge of Teyvat's cycle of death and rebirth to those with the deepest pockets. Then, with each additional recipient of that truth, little rumors begin to spread, increasing the amount of people who have potentially somewhat of an unfocused variant of this truth. And that's where we can continue with Dain's description, as he next says, the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. The oasis in this case could be regarded as a metaphor for that which is greatly desirable in a desert. Often that would be water, but in this case, that oasis is defined for us as knowledge by Dain directly, and it is then said to be contained within a desert of ignorance. That is to say that if every grain of sand in the desert represents some piece of knowledge obtained by the people, then they are living in a vast sea of lies, but not just any lies. They are lies designed to keep them from knowing the terrible truth that would bring about their very destruction. Which brings me to Dain's next line. In the city of scholars, there is a push for folly, yet the god of wisdom makes no argument against it. It's not a secret at this point that Sumeru is a nation of scholars. We've seen many characters throughout our travels thus far which hail from Sumeru, although we now understand that significant wealth could come to those who have obtained the rarest or oldest bits of knowledge, painting a picture of those from the Nation of Wisdom as more self-interested than one would normally assume of a nation of enlightened scholarly types. But we can't and shouldn't assume that everyone in Sumeru is motivated purely by self-interest, as many, including Lisa, have traveled to Sumeru in order to better themselves in hopes of improving the world. This is where the idea of the push for folly comes into play. Folly is typically described as a lack of good sense or foolishness. So it's important now to point out that not everyone is driven by financial gain or success. Then it's reasonable that some who would desire to obtain the oldest knowledge hidden in Teyvat would do so simply to understand the world around them to its fullest. And upon learning that every nation in Teyvat is doomed to a never-ending cycle of death and rebirth which is destined to destroy them or transform them into shameful creatures, they would become immediately and understandably concerned. So perhaps then, these individuals, despite likely having traded a significant wealth of knowledge, or possibly even more to obtain that knowledge, would then begin to share it for free, in hopes of saving as many as they can, while not knowing that spreading this knowledge is in fact hurrying about their own destruction. But this is still not the push for Folly, but rather the catalyst for it. As Dain also said, that the God of Wisdom makes no argument against said folly. And I do not believe that the God of Wisdom would actively stand down while watching their nation barrel along towards calamity. This is because Sumeru's Archon understands that true wisdom, in this case, is ignorance, or rather, the Oasis, which is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. As I mentioned earlier, with knowledge being considered a commodity or currency in Sumeru, the free and open trade of the ultimate truth, knowledge which could yield potentially massive wealth to those who would peddle it, would effectively diminish its value, as its supply is infinite to any who would listen, and its demand, or rather those who are willing to pay for it, would become greatly reduced. So, it would behoove of them to spread irresistible lies that tell of great treasures or scholarly advances to be had around the world in order to distract, dismiss, and disparage the great truth from being offered for free. And those lies, too, could be peddled as truth for currency themselves, preventing the wealthy and supposedly learned in Sumeru from taking those who do know the proper truth seriously. This is the push for Folly that the nation's Archon could not afford to stand up and denounce, because to do so would knowingly bring destruction to their nation, leaving the Lesser Lord Kusanali trapped in a precarious position, one that the Traveler is likely the solution to. There is still a little more from the trailer which may support this idea, as the title of one of the chapters from Sumeru's Archon questline, Truth Amongst the Pages of Purana, and its accompanying ancient text also serves as a valuable clue for extrapolating the potential plot of version 3.0 and beyond. Purana itself may be a direct reference to the idea of ancient lore, as the word itself is of Hindi origins meaning old, suggesting indeed that the calamitous truth of Teyvat has been discovered amongst the pages of the world's old texts. And we've seen what happened to even Urabashi upon reading the lore of such texts. But what's more interesting is the ancient text below that title, which translates to read, Sub Floris Lumine Sege Citatis. This is Latin text translating to mean, under the flowery light of wisdom. Now, seeing as how Lesser Lord Kusanali is referenced to be called the god of flowers by some, it is possible that this can be understood that Sumeru remains safe within the light of their god's wisdom. And indeed, if my theory is accurate, then she is currently all that stands between them and oblivion. But it is as Dain says,
but mortal arrogation never stops. None will escape the flames.
Throughout this video, I've used the knowledge we've gained in Enkanomiya and in Azuma to bring light to Dain's words in the Travail trailer. I've done this to shine a light on the idea that while those who acquire positions of wealth and power through the acquisition of knowledge in Sumeru think themselves wise, knowledge is not wisdom. Knowledge is that what will bring about their destruction, and it is the wisdom of their archons in action which spares them. It would seem in Sumeru, ignorance really is bliss. And that's it for this video. What do you think of my interpretation of Dain's outline for the plot of Sumeru? Do you think that the Dendro Archon, Lesser Lord Kusanali, is trying to prevent a new cataclysm by allowing rampant lies to distract the people of Sumeru from the truth? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like. subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you are notified when my next video goes live. And if you want to see more, check out one of these other videos. Thanks for watching Teyvat Historia. May the 7 guide you, travelers.